Hello, and welcome to Last Week Tonight. Tonight we're diving into a topic that might seem a bit dry at first, but trust me, it gets weird. We're talking about birth certificates, legal entities, and the fascinating world of fiat currency. Buckle up, because things are about to get oddly philosophical. Now, you might be thinking, John, why are we talking about birth certificates? Mine's probably gathering dust in my parents' attic alongside my old Beanie Baby collection. But hold on to your hats, folks, because your birth certificate isn't just a piece of paper. It's a legal document that signifies the creation of something quite peculiar, a legal entity. Think of it like this. Your birth certificate is like the incorporation papers for a tiny screaming company, and that company is you. Or rather, the legal entity that represents you. It's a strange concept, but stick with me, because this is where things start to get interesting. Let's break this down. When you're born, a birth certificate is issued. This document, with your name printed in all its official glory, doesn't just announce your existence to the world. It actually creates a legal entity, a fictional person that exists solely on paper. This legal entity, often referred to as your straw man, is separate from you, the flesh and blood human being. It's this entity that interacts with the state, pays taxes, holds property, and even incurs debt. Now, this might seem like a minor technicality, but it has profound implications. It means that from the moment you're born, you're essentially interacting with the world through this intermediary, this legal fiction that the state has created. Think of it this way. You, the living, breathing being, are like the CEO of that straw man. You have thoughts, feelings, aspirations. You experience joy, pain, and everything in between. But then there's the state's legal entity, the straw man. It's like the company you represent, a construct that exists purely in the legal realm. This entity doesn't have feelings or aspirations. It exists solely to interact with the system. This distinction might seem subtle, but it's crucial. It highlights the fact that the state, through the creation of this legal entity, has inserted itself into a very fundamental aspect of your existence. Now, let's talk about energy. Not the kind that powers your house, but the kind you invest in your life, your time, your effort, your skills, your very labor. All of this contributes to the value of your legal entity, your straw man. Think about it. From the moment you're born, you're nurtured, educated, and prepared to become a productive member of society. You invest years in learning, developing skills, and contributing to the economy. All of this energy, all of this effort, goes into building up the value of that legal entity. You are, in essence, a valuable asset to the state and a beneficial owner. But here's the kicker. How are you compensated for this investment? Section 5. Fiat currency. Promises. Promises. Here's where fiat currency enters the picture. You see, all the labor and energy you invest in your life, in building up the state's legal entity, is ultimately repaid with promises. Promises in the form of paper money. Fiat currency, unlike gold or other tangible assets, has no intrinsic value. It's backed only by the government's promise that it's worth something. It's essentially an IOU, a promissory note from the state. Now, this isn't to say that money is worthless. It obviously has value in our society. But it's crucial to understand that the compensation you receive for your life's work is ultimately based on trust. Trust in the system, trust in the government. Section 6. The state's debt more than just IOUs. This brings us to a crucial question. Does the state owe you an equitable interest for the investment you've made in their legal entity? You've poured your time, your energy, your very essence into building a valuable asset for the state, and in return, you receive promises. Pieces of paper that represent future value, but which are ultimately dependent on the whims of the market and the stability of the system. Some argue that this system is inherently imbalanced. That the state, by creating these legal entities and reaping the benefits of our labor, has incurred a debt that goes beyond simple monetary compensation. Section 7. Beneficial ownership. Who really owns your life? This leads us to the concept of beneficial ownership. If the state has created this legal entity, this strawman, and benefits from your labor through this entity, who really owns the rights to your life's work? Is it you, the living, breathing individual who pours your heart and soul into every endeavor? Or is it the state, the entity that claims jurisdiction over your legal persona and reaps the rewards of your efforts? It's a question that challenges the very foundation of our social contract. If the state is claiming ownership over the fruits of your labor, shouldn't you have a greater say in how those fruits are utilized? Section 8. Settling the score. Reclaiming your value. This brings us to the concept of settling the outstanding accounts of the legal entity. If the state has benefited from your labor, shouldn't you have the right to call in that debt, to demand more than just empty promises in return? Some argue that this involves reclaiming control over the legal entity, utilizing your beneficial rights to your advantage. This could involve challenging unjust laws, demanding greater transparency from the government, or even exploring alternative economic models. It's about recognizing your own inherent value, the value of your time and effort, and demanding a system that reflects that value in a tangible way. Section 9. A new perspective on the system. Now, I know this might seem like a lot to digest. We've gone from birth certificates to legal entities to the very nature of value and ownership. But that's the point, isn't it? To challenge our preconceived notions and look at the world from a fresh perspective. By understanding the relationship between our legal identities, fiat currency, and the state, we can begin to ask critical questions about the systems we live in and explore alternative ways of structuring our world. Section 10. Food for thought. Time to rethink the contract. So, the next time you stumble across your birth certificate tucked away in a dusty box, take a moment to consider its significance. It's not just a memento of your entry into the world, but a symbol of a complex and often overlooked contract between the individual and the state. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we renegotiated the terms of that contract. That's our show tonight. See you next week.